In 2015, Steve Silberman wrote the book Neurotribes, The Legacy of Autism and the Future of Neurodiversity. What is autism? A lifelong disability or a naturally occurring form of cognitive difference, akin to certain forms of genius. In truth, it is all these things and more, and the future of our society depends on our understanding it. I remember hearing about this book when it first came out, and since then, it seems that the predictions made by Steve Silberman have more or less come to fruition. The term neurodiversity is now quite common in workplace HR speak, and just one thing that I want to talk about in this video, just to focus on, is the prevalence of people saying that they are autistic and that people don't believe they're autistic because they don't act autistic enough.
What? You're not autistic. What? What do you mean? Well, you're nothing like my little cousin. He's like obsessed with trains.
Diagnostic criteria for autism acknowledges that autistic traits might be masked by learned strategies in later life, and masking has been spoken about since at least the 1990s. In 1999, the book Pretending to be Normal was published, but people will often try and judge how autistic someone is based on what they externalize.
By definition, successful high-masking people do not look autistic. In fact, it's kind of ironic that when someone finally does try to share their true self, that the legitimacy is questioned because all we see from the outside is the perfect mask. So in the end, there are lots of signs if you know what to look for, but they all start with the mind frame that the person is not the mask, and it's what's underneath the mask that is the most important.
And it got me thinking about this way that we in modern times think of ourselves as the inner self, the one who is thinking, the one who is planning, the one who's judging, the one who's feeling. The things that are happening inside us, that's our own idea of ourselves, like our soul. And we don't think of ourselves so much as the sister, or, the brother, the mother, the employee, the member of the community. We don't think of ourselves as our actions and our relationships, our jobs, or at least that seems to be how our language is developing in the ways that we describe ourselves. This is a difference that's been measured between more individualistic societies and more collectivist societies. And it's not that one is necessarily better than the other, but in my opinion, being so introspective and navel-gazing and really analysing yourself and your own emotions and your own thoughts isn't always the best way of leading a good life or fixing the things about yourself that you don't like, or just improving your life and living the best way that you can. So I'll start off by saying that when I started making videos, that was, I think, probably the first time that anyone sincerely suggested that I might have autism. And when I started to see people on YouTube, especially on YouTube and TikTok, saying that they were autistic who didn't seem at all autistic to me, it just made me think, well, if they're autistic, then I definitely am. The way these autistic people describe their experience of autism, that they use this term masking to talk about how they know how to pretend not to have autism, and they can get by in normal social interactions. They can get by at work and on dates, and they can appear to not be autistic to people they're meeting for the first time, or even people they think of as friends or acquaintances, at least. They've developed this way of masking their symptoms to appear normal, or rather, I shouldn't say normal, I should say neurotypical. Anyone who doesn't have autism or ADHD is called neurotypical. And to me that makes sense, especially if you know that you have autism and you can identify the traits that you have that are autistic. You're now better equipped to focus on those behaviors that you have, those parts of your personality that are making you difficult to be around. If you can target those and try to eliminate those from your personality, then it might be easier for you to make friends. It might be easier for you to get through a job interview or something important that matters to you. But it does challenge this idea that my previous understanding would be that if you have the ability to pretend you don't have it, to stop people seeing it in you, then it's not really a disability. You have severe autism. Now, I'm talking about children and adults who are completely non-verbal, who are not able to organize their own lives or to provide for themselves in any way. There's really nothing you can teach them to do that will mitigate those symptoms. But when autism is combined with high intelligence, what you get is someone who is intelligent enough to figure out that their behavior is making people respond to them in a way they don't like, or in a way that is getting in the way of their goals. They just learn to stop doing the things that are making their lives difficult for whatever reason. But the thing with that is that everyone has to do that to some extent. That's just what growing up is. When you're a child or a toddler, you have full control over your body. There's nothing that you really can't do. And yet there's still a long way to go before you have properly socialized to the point where you are no longer, offending or irritating people. And, many adults who are not very self-aware have still not quite got there. They're not quite understanding what it is that makes them annoying to other people. Your thinking self that is controlling your urges is as much a part of you as the urges themselves. And perhaps it is more difficult for some people than others to go through this process and to do this every day when you're out in public among people, trying to pretend that you're just this morally upstanding, clean, kind, interesting person. It's certainly not as easy for some people as others. It requires a lot of effort on the parts of introverted people trying to appear interesting and enthusiastic and trying to be friendly. It can be really tiring to continue that mask, as the new parlance calls it. And similarly, it's really a relief to be alone or to be with people you're really close to who you can just be yourself around. But really, what is yourself? Is it the person that you are when you're alone? I don't really believe that's yourself. When you turn the lights off and you lie awake at night, the thing that buzzes around in your head, all the thoughts that you have and your memories and the judgments you're making about things that have happened and people and all those thoughts, that's part of you, but I don't think that's the whole picture. People are more than just the activity that happens in their own brain. It's the regulation of your behavior, the things that you choose to do even if you don't want to do them. And it goes beyond just neurotypical, neurodiversity ideas. I think there's a lot of evidence of this in other aspects of life as well. The way we define sexuality now is pretty modern as an idea. The old-fashioned ideas were certainly not that inclusive, shall we say. There was, really only one sexuality that was acceptable, and everything else was just kind of degenerate. But when monkeypox was going to be the new COVID and it was spreading around, there were news stories about this new virus, monkeypox, and it was spreading through certain kinds of sex. I don't know if people watch this show with their kids. I don't want to get too much into it, but certain kinds of, let's say, adult interactions were spreading this virus, and it was deemed to be an increased risk to men who had sex with men. That was what they called it. Weirdly, they described it not as the identity or as the label. Being a man who has desire for other men is not what is spreading this virus. It's the action of, these activities you're partaking in that's what's spreading the virus. So, whatever you call yourself, if you're having sex with men and you're a man, you could get it, right? And that's kind of what I think of. That is quite a sensible, I think, way to frame sexuality. So, for me, that means that I don't think that calling myself straight means nearly as much as saying I am married to a man. Saying I'm attracted to men is, I mean, it's kind of accurate because I'm attracted to a man. So that's kind of the extent of it. And that's, by saying that I'm married to a man, or just saying I'm married, that's much more information dense explanation of my love life than to say that I'm straight, or if I said I'm bi. What does that mean if you're married to a man as a woman? Because you're not, you're not having sex with women. Maybe you did once, or you may, hypothetically in the future, but it's this very solipsistic way of defining yourself.
Both is good.
I shared on this channel how I've been going to church, and I still am going to church every Sunday. And as I've been going, I've been getting just more and more involved in church activities, both on during services and then in the rest of the week as well, just having friends from church. And that's been a really positive part of my life, and I now get to share that with my children, and I've been really enjoying that. But I think to a lot of people, they wouldn't call me a Christian because I don't really believe in the resurrection. I don't really have any what you might call supernatural beliefs. Just explain to you what I believe, I think is a lot less interesting than to explain what it is that I do and the way that I act. I think that's a much more rich way of getting to know someone by their actions and by their words than just to hear about their feelings and their beliefs and their opinions, when these things don't really translate into anything in the real world. So when the census form came through our door to fill in and send off, I identified myself as a Christian, not as an atheist, and I think I'm entitled to do that because I go to church and because I give money to the church as if I were a Christian. I treat other people like a Christian. I try to implement those lessons in my life, and I don't think being a Christian is just about what you believe. And now I understand, to a lot of people, and especially to a lot of Christians, what you believe is really important to your Christianity, and that those people probably wouldn't think of me as a Christian, and that's fine. I really don't mind what you think of me. But I pray, I read the Bible, I celebrate Christian holidays. I usually just tell people that I go to church, and that's about they kind of get the idea. And I think broadly the same logic is why I don't think I'll be identifying as autistic, even if I do get a diagnosis. I think that I'm able to get where I want to in life. I've been able to meet my goals in life, even with these autistic traits that sometimes make me not very fun to talk to at parties. I do think that it is slightly confusing that we use the word autism to mean these two vastly different conditions, even if theoretically these things are linked. Like, the autistic traits are similar in high functioning and cases of very debilitating autism. There's a link there. It affects people so differently that it made more sense to me when it was called Asperger's syndrome compared to when they were calling it, these days calling it autism or high functioning autism.
If there was a social development disease, you wouldn't call it Asperger's. That's just mean. That
video that I made called Do I Have Autism? I think that was the name of the video. Maybe you can consider this a sequel to that. And the jury is still out. We still don't know if I have autism, and maybe I'll just continue this series for every few years. We'll check in to see if I have autism now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm really interested to see what everyone in the comments has to say about such a wide-ranging topic as this.